In this berserker off-road adventure, three friends with trucks explore Colorado forest roads in search of snow and smiles. We found one, and the other came naturally. We started our first day in a dispersed campsite on the frozen banks of the Deweese Reservoir, about 3 miles north of Westcliff. The site had a girthy view of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. One luxury of camping in Colorado is you're never alone. Ice fishermen were gracious to wake us at dawn with their car stereos and augers. This was true for both lakes we camped at this trip, but I can't blame the fishermen. The lake was beautiful and it was a gorgeous day. Besides, our site was free. If we wanted to truly be alone, we could have worked harder to find a more remote site. On my adventure trips, I enjoy some coffee every day. Now, that's more of a necessity. See, at home before I work out, I take a pre-workout, which has 300 milligrams of caffeine, or about 3 cups of coffee's worth. Obviously, I'm not taking that when I'm on the trail, so I drink coffee to supplement that caffeine. And my coffee, it's nothing fancy. It's just instant coffee mixed with hot water from the jet boil. Boom, good to go. I do have a French press for my jet boil, but I found that that's too much to clean. You have to clean out the press and then the grounds from the jet boil, and that uses a lot of water too. So I prefer the instant grounds just for the simplicity and the taste. It's good enough. From the reservoir, we worked our way northeast, exploring forest roads that on the map had the most turns or crossed the densest contour lines. Our convoy was my Gladiator with a ground tent, a Ranger with an alu-cab, and a Ram Rebel with a custom trailer and a rooftop tent. Each of these rigs and setups had their own pros and cons, and throughout this trip we discovered their strengths and their weaknesses. This trip was a spur-of-the-moment getaway. A day before Christmas, I got a call from a friend asking if I was interested in hunting for snow in Colorado, which was an easy heck yeah. Between family gatherings on Christmas, I packed my truck, and on the third busiest shopping day of the year, I hit the road for Colorado. My Gladiator Rubicon has 35-inch tires on the stock suspension. Now the factory shocks, they're great for an empty truck around town on city streets, but once the truck's loaded and on the highway, the truck sways nauseously like I hit a bump and it'll just sway back and forth, almost like a pendulum. Now, I know I need to upgrade the shocks, but I don't know what to get, and that's complicated because I don't need to lift my truck right now, so I need a shock that is stiffer, but also works with the factory height of the truck. One mistake I made is I filled up my roto packs in Kansas City at under 1,000 feet of elevation. Right now we're camping at just over 9,000 feet, so the fuel had expanded inside the roto packs, or sorry, the gas did, and so it's a little bloated. As you can see, it's a little round and bulging, so I should have been venting this as we went up in elevation. Only one night did the wind let up enough to risk starting a fire to cook my dinner. I brought a cooler full of ribeyes, eggs, and bacon thinking I was going to be cooking these feasts, but because of the wind, it was almost too much to have a fire going. Luckily, I had the foresight to bring enough backpacking meals to last me the entire trip, and of course, could have run into town to get some more supplies if we needed to, but I like being self-sufficient when I go on these trips because it's only a few days, and I don't want to spend time going into town. Anyway, I finally got a fire going and I was able to cook my ribeyes. That's a staple on my adventure trips, is cooking a ribeye on a skillet, and it was fantastic. A little salty on the peppery side because the wind kept blowing the salt and pepper out of my shakers more than I wanted to, but you know what? It's a camp meal. It was awesome, and I was glad to have the calories. Day 2. Our plan is to explore Marshall Pass, which is 30 miles of forest road. It crosses the Continental Divide and rounds Mount Ouray, the backbone of the Devil's Armchair. The road meets with Highway 50 in the town of Sargent. We expected to find snow, and boy did we. We expected to explore a lot today, thinking we'd finish Marshall Pass by lunch, and we needed to stay nimble, so we left the Ranger and the Rebels trailer at camp. going to the front. Being from Kansas, I'm relatively green when it comes to exploring the backcountry in the snow. The guys I was with are well seasoned and they coached me on how to keep moving in the snow.
Get my boards out. Nice and easy. There you go. Nice.
Further up the pass, the snow was getting thick. I began to regret not having a lift as my entire underbelly was acting like a plow, but man, I was having fun. By this point, we were a few miles into Marshall Pass, and it was snowing about 6 inches per hour on us. That snow was getting deep, and I was clearing trail, and I was having a blast. And I was having fun learning the different settings in the Jeep, the 4 high versus 4 low, lockers, manually selecting different gears, engaging versus disengaging, the traction control, just seeing how different things worked, and what combinations gave me the most progress on the trail. And yes, I was aired down to 5 psi to maximize the grip, to try to get on top of that snow too and float on top of the snowpack. But what I was struggling with was a combination of momentum and traction. Because I was in 4 high, my lockers, I could not engage them. And so I was fighting the traction control as I was going forward. It was cutting power to the wheels, and I was losing momentum because of that. I was also dealing with axle hop. Because of the solid axle and the spring suspension, it was giving me the equivalent of death wobble, but in the snow. And so I would lose traction because of that too. I could have used a lift as well. I have stock suspension on my Jeep with these 35-inch tires, and as you can see in these shots, I was just plowing through the snow. I could have used a few more inches of clearance and 37-inch tires, but in hindsight, that would have just meant we would have gotten a few more miles down the trail and gotten stuck further up and would have had to turn back then anyway. But it was a blast learning how to properly drive my truck in the snow. Now, the next day, I learned about the Offroad Plus button because I finally read the manual, and that thing just unlocked a whole new level of capability on the truck. It was like sport driving in the snow. It was a lot more spirited in the snow to give me a lot more traction, and so I was not fighting the traction control. I was able to utilize my momentum to power through the snow. Eventually, I slid too close to the edge of the road, and I was close to sliding off into the trees. I was stuck, and I needed help. Here comes my rescue.
Oh, jeez. Buried down to my knee. Alright, you're good. Alright, so we have here, so one there. Come forward. One there. Awesome. Give that to you.
I don't think we're going to make it to the divide.
Nope. That's an easy forward. Start turning your wheels a little towards me. That's good.
My only escape was a Max Trax bridge, constructed by a man that recently had back surgery. That is friendship. Wow, that music was intense. My rescue was pretty easy, and I had fun learning how to get out.
It's fucking deep. I don't know if you can see. That's deeper than my knees. First time I've been wheeling snow this deep. It's a combination of teamwork, airing down to 5, and Max Trax, and good spotting from Levi. Got me out of this mess. Otherwise, I thought we would slip down this shelf down there. That would have sucked. That would have ruined my day.
By the time I was freed from the snow, it was approaching sundown, and the snow was still increasing. We headed back to camp for dinner. There were more days ahead to explore, and we did not need to risk spending a night on the trail. I absolutely want to return here in the summer and explore this entire network of forest roads and hiking trails. A single road just does not do this slice of the Colorado mountains justice. Let's talk setups. The Ranger lugged around an Alu-cab, which could be ready to sleep in 30 seconds. He was the quickest in and out of camp, saving him valuable time. However, that comfort and quickness was expensive. The Rebel had a custom-built, self-sustained trailer. He had a Tepui rooftop tent that was impervious to the elements. His only complaint was that it was a hassle to get dressed in. The Ranger and the Rebel had diesel heaters. The heaters are designed for RVs and campers, are the size of a briefcase, and aren't terribly noisy. They put out more than enough heat for a tent or a pop-up. Now, be careful. If you power the heater and a fridge off the same battery, you might wake up with a dead battery in the morning. I preferred to acclimate to the cold in my ground tent. The Ranger driver brought a Gazelle gazebo, which we spent the evenings in watching movies. It did great in the weather and kept us warm. It was windy the entire trip. At night, we had gusts up to 35 miles an hour with the wind chill down to 0 degrees. During the days, it let up a little bit, and it would warm up, enough. Sometimes the sun would come out, but for the most part, it was overcast and windy, and that was chilly. One thing I've learned is there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes. And I was comfortable in the layers I was wearing, enough so that I could probably sleep out in the open and be just fine. And my tent, I was impressed with how it held up. It's an MSR Hubba Hubba. It's a 2-person tent, for me a 1-person. And just by sticking down the extra guy lines, it was enough in the wind. The wind would press the vestibules down and would block the wind from flowing in. And I didn't have issues with condensation in the tent either at night. I had a good sleeping system inside to keep me warm. Some nights I was even sweating in the tent. I was so warm. So overall, I was surprisingly comfortable in my lightweight and somewhat minimalist setup. Day 3's plan was to follow Silver Creek Road about 30 miles to Villa Grove, and then loop back to camp. But once again, our trail appetite exceeded reality, and we were stopped many times in our tracks. Ultimately, we had to turn back. A few miles in, we came to a downed tree. We discussed turning around and finding other roads to explore.
That's some tree right there. It's my hand for size.
But we decided that since we had the right tools, we can take care of it ourselves. And our cute little electric chainsaws, they did the trick. We planned to go 30 miles, but only made it 5. This steep and deep switchback was just too much for us. The angle of it was going to slide us into the trees, so we turned back to explore other roads. After coming across more trees than we were prepared to handle, we turned back and packed camp. That evening, we found a neat road through Red Canyon Park, north of Canyon City. We stopped in Colorado Springs for the night, then left for home early the next morning. This Colorado trip underscored how spontaneity and preparedness can result in an adventure worth sharing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the trail.